The rain is a cruel curtain. It slams down on the jungle canopy, turning the earth into a sickening, churning mud. But the sound of the monsoon is nothing compared to the roar of the war. They are deep in a bunker, a hole carved into the earth, and yet the violence still shakes the ground around them. This is the final hill. This is the last stand. The air is thick with the copper tang of blood and the sour, acrid smoke of burnt powder. Every few seconds, the light inside the bunker flashes white and then collapses back into oppressive darkness as American artillery explodes nearby. They press their backs against the damp earth walls, hands slick with mud and sweat, gripping weapons that feel impossibly heavy. This is not a battle, this is a siege. They can hear the enemy now. Not just the distant, deafening percussion of their guns, but the close, chilling sound of their footsteps. They are coming, slowly, methodically, clearing the perimeter with practiced, ruthless efficiency. This enemy does not stop. Suddenly, without warning, a mortar round hits the lip of the bunker entrance. The whole world lurches, a deafening crack. Earth and rock and shrapnel scream into the tiny space. For a moment, there is only white noise, a ringing silence in the eardrums. Then, the chaos returns, sharper, closer. They cough, trying to clear the dust and the taste of sulfur from their mouths, and they look at each other through the gloom. The message is passed without a word. This is it. They are women, soldiers, and citizens of the empire. They have endured starvation, sickness, and the endless, bone-deep terror of island warfare. They were taught that surrender is the ultimate shame, a crime against the emperor and the ancestors. They stand ready for a glorious death. They believe the Americans are brutal savages, devoid of honor, and that capture means a fate worse than any bullet. This conviction, this refusal to yield, is the last fortification they possess. The sound of fighting charges towards their position. A machine gun screams just outside, spitting hot lead into the sandbags they piled up hours earlier. They shuffle into firing positions, every breath ragged and forced. They know there are no reinforcements. Just them, the wet, black earth, and the unrelenting advance of an enemy they were told was on the brink of collapse. Just before dawn, the firing abruptly changes. The machine gun stutters, and then a horrifyingly coordinated volley of American rifle fire rips through the remaining defenses. The American voice, loud, close, and speaking in a calm, flat tone, can be heard over the noise. They hear the clink of metal, the sound of equipment moving, and the unmistakable metallic rasp of a tank's tread, closer now than it has ever been. A wave of dread lurches through the bunker. Tanks. They have no anti-tank weapon left. They have no defense. The world outside turns into a storm of steel and fire, shaking the bunker violently. They brace for the final impact, preparing to follow their training, the grenade, the rifle, the charge, the ultimate sacrifice. But then, the gunfire stops. The deafening silence is worse than the noise. They listen, hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against their ribs, a private drumbeat against the jungle's ambient sound. This is not the end. They were promised. This is confusion. A voice, translated through a loudspeaker, echoes through the smoke. It's a message, an offer of safe passage, of medical care, of surrender. The word itself is poison. They were taught to never listen to it. They wait, frozen, tense. The command comes from the highest-ranking officer left in the bunker, passed as a whisper, "Hold." They hold their breath. Minutes stretch into an eternity. They wait for the American charge, the final brutal sweep. Instead, they hear the distant, distinct sound of a radio. And then, unbelievably, another order, faint, confused, relayed down the line of their own remaining forces: cease fire. The order hits them like a physical blow. They look at one another, seeing the same mixture of disbelief, betrayal, and total devastation in every face. They are women who had prepared to charge, to scream, to die. Now, they are told to simply stop. The ideology that fueled their every footstep, bullet, and breath has just collapsed. They emerge slowly from the bunker, blinking against the harsh, weak daylight. The scene is devastating, their positions are rubble, their comrades lie where they fell. And standing above them, against the backdrop of the battered trees, are the Americans. This is the first look. They see the enemy up close for the first time. They are not the barbaric monsters of the propaganda, they are disciplined, well-fed, and wearing clean, perfect uniforms. They carry weapons they have never seen, semi-automatic rifles and vast amounts of ammunition. This small, terrifying detail, the enemy's abundant and endless supply, pierces the heart of their belief system. This is the turning point. They have survived the battle, but they now face the psychological ordeal of capture. They are prisoners of war, a collective shame, but also witnesses. They are about to be moved from the brutal, resource-starved edges of the empire to the beating, industrial heart of the very enemy they fought. The journey begins immediately. They are loaded onto trucks, driven away from the battlefield, and into the growing realization that their entire world is about to be redefined. The ideological walls they built around themselves are already beginning to crumble. The journey to the transport ship is long, dusty, and silent. They are marched past vast, unimaginable reserves of American equipment, supplies piled higher than any building they have ever known. The efficiency is staggering. They were told the Americans were struggling, stretched thin. The sheer, overwhelming logistical power they witness with every footstep tells a vastly different story. They reach the port. The scale of the ships waiting there is biblical. They are enormous, clean, and carry more men and material than their entire home fleet. They look at the sheer, cold steel of the hulls and a terrifying question forms in the back of every mind: how could we have ever won? This is a story that reveals the true cost of war, not just in blood, but in the shattering of belief. It's a journey into the heart of the enemy, and a horrifying look at the world they never knew existed. They are about to cross an ocean. And what they find on the other side will not be the struggling, primitive nation of their propaganda, but a civilization built on a power they could not even comprehend. This journey is just beginning. You're watching a true, forgotten chapter of the Pacific War, one that changed the minds of the people who lived it forever. We are working hard to bring these forgotten stories of sacrifice and survival to light. If you think this history deserves to be seen, do your part, hit the like button and subscribe now. Don't let these stories fade into the smoke of time. The massive troop transport vessel shoves its way out into the open sea. They are packed into the lower decks, the metallic groaning of the hull their constant companion. The rhythmic thrum of the powerful, endless engines is the sound of American certainty, moving them relentlessly eastward, toward the continental enemy. They watch the last vestiges of the island vanish into the haze, leaving them alone on the vast, unforgiving ocean. Days bleed into one another. They are fed regular, clean meals, but the food tastes like ashes because of the questions churning in their minds. They were prepared to die, to be executed, to endure deprivation. But the unexpected organization, the abundance of the enemy, that is what is truly breaking them down. Their greatest terror is no longer the American bullet, but the American factories. The ship hits open water, plunging them into the belly of the beast. They realize they are being taken to the place that has manufactured their defeat, the homeland of the industrial enemy they never truly understood. Finally, after an eternity of blue and gray, the order comes. They are told to prepare for landfall. As the massive ship slows, the women are moved to the top deck, a final processing before stepping onto foreign soil. They climb the stairs, their hearts a frantic drumbeat against the steady pulse of the ship's engine. The San Francisco skyline slams into view. It is not a city under siege, it is a city triumphant. They see skyscrapers reaching into a clear blue sky, massive docks humming with activity, and 1,000 brightly colored, fast-moving automobiles. Not one building is damaged. Not one street is dark. It is a vision of unbelievable wealth and power. They look at the city, then at each other. The scale of the reality before them is too vast, too overwhelming for their minds to process. Every piece of propaganda they believed, every single sacrifice they made, every victory they celebrated, is instantly revealed as a devastating lie. They have fought the full might of their spirit against the overwhelming, untouched might of this industrial continent. They are about to step onto a world they never knew existed. They are about to see just how wrong they were. The humiliation of capture is nothing compared to the shock of this reality. The gangplank clanks onto American concrete. They are marching down. The first footstep onto U.S. soil is not the end of a physical journey, but the terrifying beginning of a cognitive war, a war they have already lost. What they see next will be the single most defining moment of their lives, a silent, psychological attack that no bullet could ever match. The truth is waiting for them just beyond the docks. They step off the ship and look up at the towering, untouched buildings. The war is over for them, but the true devastation is just about to begin. The great troop transport ship shoves its way out into the open sea, the vast Pacific now stretching before them. The journey is long, dusty, and silent. Every rhythmic thrum of the engine is the sound of an enemy's unstoppable will, moving them relentlessly eastward, toward the continental enemy. They look out at the receding island haze, leaving behind the only world they knew. They sit packed into the cargo holds, no longer soldiers but passengers on a cold, indifferent machine. The fear of death has been replaced by the cold, slow-burning shame of survival. This transition from jungle fire to maritime transport is the beginning of the psychological war. As the days bleed into one another, the reality of American logistical power becomes their constant companion. They are given regular, clean meals, not luxurious, but plentiful and consistent. The food tastes like ashes because they cannot forget the comrades who wasted away from hunger, the mothers who starved on the home islands. They were told their enemy was struggling, that their spirit was superior to the enemy's meager provisions. But the consistent, abundant food in their hands tells a devastatingly different story. They are housed in large, well-ventilated holds, the air conditioning a bizarre, cool blast against their grime-caked skin. The ship's efficiency is staggering. They were prepared for the worst kind of abuse and confinement. Instead, they are met with bureaucratic separation and clinical process, managed with a professional distance that implies they are simply a piece of inventory in a larger system. They remember the desperate measures of their own military, the scavenging for fuel, the constant patching of sinking hulls, the total lack of medical supplies. Now, they are aboard a colossal vessel that crosses an entire ocean with such routine, almost bored power. They realize the enemy has the means to ferry thousands of people and millions of tons of material across this immense expanse with unsettling ease. This realization is the devastating twist the battle failed to deliver. The ultimate twist of their captivity is that the greatest destruction is not what the enemy inflicted on their bodies, but what the enemy's existence has inflicted on their beliefs. We are following a collective of women soldiers whose world is about to be shattered by a single glimpse of their enemy's true power. If their story is important to you, subscribe right now. Don't let the algorithms bury this unique piece of World War II history. They are allowed short, supervised moments on the open deck. Looking out over the endless blue, they see not only the vastness of the sea but the terrifying scope of the American Navy's reach. The sheer size of the ship under their feet is a constant, physical reminder of the unanswerable industrial might they faced. They look at each other, the fear now mixed with a dizzying sense of the unknown. They believe they are being taken to face final judgment, perhaps an isolated camp in the middle of a vast American desert, a place of slow punishment. But the journey continues relentlessly eastward, toward the heart of the enemy's empire, to the place they were taught was on the verge of collapse. The ideological walls they built around themselves are now collapsing under the weight of this material reality. They are no longer just defeated soldiers, they are witnesses to a frightening truth: the enemy's resources are endless, their logistical reach is global, and their power is absolute. They understand now that the war they fought was not a fight between two equal spirits, but a desperate, losing struggle against an industrial behemoth that never had to truly strain itself. This journey is a testament to the sacrifice of those who fought in the Pacific. By sharing these rarely heard perspectives, we honor the cost of the conflict. Share this video with a friend who appreciates a gripping war story and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. The weight of this knowledge, that their comrades died fighting a machine they could never hope to stop, is the most profound pressure. They were taught to seek a glorious death, instead, they are delivered to a chilling, life-altering truth. Finally, after an eternity of blue and gray, the order comes. They are told to prepare for landfall. They gather their few possessions, their hearts pounding in anticipation of the unknown judgment that awaits them on the distant shores. The ship slows, the powerful thrum of the engines softening. They climb the stairs to the upper deck, drawn by a terrifying curiosity. As the massive ship maneuvers into the harbor, the San Francisco skyline slams into view. It is not a city under siege, it is a city triumphant. They see skyscrapers reaching into a clear blue sky, massive docks humming with activity, and 1,000 brightly colored, fast-moving automobiles. Not one building is damaged. Not one street is dark. It is a vision of unbelievable wealth and power. They look at the city, then at each other. The scale of the reality before them is too vast, too overwhelming for their minds to process. The gangplank clanks onto American concrete. They are marching down. They take the first footstep onto U.S. soil, and the full, horrifying magnitude of their miscalculation hits them. They have arrived in a world they were told was crumbling, only to discover a civilization that had not even broken a sweat. The immense, gray transport ship finally slips into the harbor. The powerful engines cease their deep, steady thrum. The silence that follows is heavy, broken only by the sharp, echoing clank of the gangplank being lowered onto American concrete. They emerge from the cramped interior and step onto the deck, immediately hit by a chilling, alien wind. The San Francisco port looms before them, and the sight of it is the first true, physical shock of their captivity. They look out at the cityscape, and the world they knew collapses. The cities they left behind were beautiful, but ravaged by years of war, blackout restrictions, and resource scarcity. The city before them, however, is shining. Massive cranes reach into the sky, symbols of unceasing industrial might. Hundreds of trucks, trains, and automobiles move with bewildering speed along paved roads and rail lines. The buildings are towering, clean, and untouched by a single bomb crater. There are no camouflage nets. There are no frantic air raid drills. The contrast between their own memory of war-torn Asia and this vibrant, fully functioning civilization slams into them. They were told that America was suffering, that the people were weak and demoralized by losses in the Pacific. What they see is a nation operating at full capacity, its industrial heart pounding with unstoppable power. They are processed quickly. The American forces move them not with hostility, but with the ruthless efficiency of an assembly line. They are moved in small groups, always under guard, but never subjected to violence. This clinical, detached treatment is its own form of terror. They were prepared to resist abuse, they are defenseless against bureaucratic organization. The first unexpected tactic of the enemy is not a weapon, but the environment itself. They are loaded onto buses for the transport inland. As the buses lurch out of the immediate port area, they press their faces to the windows, trying to comprehend the sheer scale of the prosperity. They see endless rows of modern houses, each one uniform, but well kept. They see grocery stores stocked with goods, fresh fruits, meat, and packaged items in staggering abundance. They see civilian women driving cars and walking down sidewalks, dressed in fashionable clothes, laughing, utterly detached from the brutality of the war being fought thousands of miles away. This is the enemy's secret weapon, safety. They recall the hunger, the constant, gnawing starvation that plagued their front lines and home cities. They remember their own people struggling to produce meager rations from soil exhausted by war efforts. The sight of the boundless American farmlands shatters the image of a struggling enemy. This channel brings you these rarely heard perspectives on the war's end. If this history deserves to be seen, then hit the subscribe button now. Don't let these stories fade into the smoke of time. The bus snakes its way through the country, heading toward the final detention facility. The landscape itself becomes a testament to American power. They pass massive factories churning out supplies, not under the cover of night, but openly, in the bright sunlight. They see farms stretching to the horizon, huge fields being worked by enormous, powerful tractors. Suddenly, a massive, integrated military base flashes past the windows. They glimpse aircraft hangars the size of city blocks, filled with rows upon rows of new planes, not old, patched-up fighters, but shiny, silver bombers waiting to be flown. The sheer, overwhelming volume of it all screams the truth: America is not running out of resources. America has not even begun to slow down. This is the moment of agonizing, silent revelation. The enemy they fought was one they could see, a soldier with a rifle, a plane in the sky. But the enemy they truly faced was this: a nation with an endless, unassailable industrial capacity. It wasn't a matter of if America would win, it was a matter of how long it would take. The bus finally pulls up to the detention center. It is not the makeshift camp they expected, but a large, purpose-built facility, clean, orderly, and surrounded by a high, sturdy fence. They are led inside, their minds no longer focused on escape or resistance, but on processing this catastrophic new truth. This journey is a testament to the sacrifice of those who fought in the Pacific. By sharing these rarely heard perspectives, one honors the cost of the conflict. Share this video with a friend who appreciates a gripping war story and let others know your thoughts in the comments below. As the door to their barracks is closed, they look out the window at the setting sun illuminating the American landscape. They see a world of endless, effortless resource. They see a prosperity that their own country's citizens gave up everything to achieve, but never reached. The ultimate twist of their captivity is that the greatest destruction is not what the enemy inflicted on their bodies, but what the enemy's existence has inflicted on their beliefs. They realize now that every sacrifice they made, every comrade they lost, was measured against an enemy that never had to sacrifice at all. The battle is over, but the silent, internal war over ideology has just begun. Suddenly, a high-ranking American officer enters the barracks, holding a newspaper. He looks directly at them, the collective of defeated women soldiers, and calmly unfolds the paper to reveal a headline and a massive photograph that causes a collective, agonizing gasp. The photo is a vast, gray cloud shaped like a mushroom, rising over a ruined, distant city. The officer speaks only one word, his voice low and utterly devoid of triumph: Hiroshima. The war, they realize, has just changed again. And they are the only ones standing in the heart of the power that changed it. The word Hiroshima hangs in the air, a bell tolling the end of a world. The massive photograph on the newspaper, a cloud shaped like a grotesque mushroom, dominates the small room where they are held. For a moment, the clean, orderly barracks dissolve back into the chaos of the jungle, and they can feel the heat of that impossible weapon from thousands of miles away. The collective shock is profound, a terror far beyond the fear of a tank or a bayonet. They understand artillery. They understand bombers. But the sudden, absolute devastation shown in the image, a single blow that vaporizes an entire city, is an act of God, a power that completely redefines the very nature of war. They understand that this is the final, unanswerable expression of the material advancement they have been witnessing since stepping off the ship. The American officer leaves the newspaper on a table and exits, his face impassive. They surge forward, hands trembling as they read the headlines and examine the image. The details are sparse but terrifying: a new, single bomb with the power of thousands of conventional planes. The emotional stakes are intensified beyond measure. Their struggle was not just against a resourceful enemy, it was against a species that had just unlocked cosmic power. This new pressure is the weight of hopelessness. The news confirms every unsettling suspicion planted during the journey across the Pacific. The enemy's efficiency, the overwhelming production numbers, the effortless wealth, it all leads to this. The American capacity for unimaginable escalation is now a devastating fact. They were fighting a war of spirit and sacrifice, the enemy was fighting a war of science and unstoppable energy. The detention center itself, with its calm order, now takes on a sinister hue. The clean, heated barracks, the running water, the plentiful food, these are not gestures of kindness, but the byproducts of a civilization that has solved its resource problems on a scale they cannot fathom. They realize that the Americans did not defeat them through superior courage, but through superior engineering. The ideological collapse becomes an emotional trauma. They begin to grasp the sheer scope of the lie they were told. Their entire world was built on the premise of the enemy's impending failure, yet the enemy was holding back an ultimate weapon, a technological marvel they could not even dream of. Every life lost in the desperate island battles now feels not heroic, but tragically, terrifyingly futile. The sacrifice was spent against a power that was only playing with a fraction of its strength. One afternoon, while working on a supervised cleanup detail near the facility's perimeter, they are inadvertently exposed to a scene that confirms the casual, horrifying nature of American prosperity. They see an American family packing a car for a weekend trip. The vehicle is large, gleaming with chrome, and loaded with goods that would be considered national treasures back home, brand new suitcases, coolers full of untouched food, and a colorful array of fashionable, peacetime clothing. The American woman, dressed impeccably, gestures with impatience as her husband struggles with the luggage. This domestic inconvenience, this casual display of untouched wealth, is a knife twist of contrast. They recall their own families, gaunt and shivering, hiding in rubble, their only possessions what they could carry. The luxury here is so common, so unremarkable, that the owners barely register its value. This sighting shatters the last vestiges of the propaganda that painted Americans as decadent but ultimately weak. They see a nation so powerful, so insulated from the conflict they fought, that its greatest stressor is weekend traffic. They are watching a culture that operates with a material security they cannot possibly comprehend, a security that makes the existence of the atomic bomb almost incidental to their way of life. The pressure escalates again when they are finally granted supervised access to a small common room, which includes a working radio. The American guards play popular swing music and broadcast news reports. The music, fast and joyful, is alien, the sound of a culture utterly untouched by the grinding fear they have lived with for years. The news reports, however, are what truly demoralize them. The broadcasts focus heavily on the ongoing industrial production, the arsenal of democracy. The numbers are spoken casually, hundreds of planes rolling off the assembly line weekly, dozens of ships being commissioned monthly. They understand logistics. They understand that these are not just statistics, these are the endless waves of steel and fire that will crush their remaining forces. The radio delivers the chilling message that the factories that built the atomic bomb are still humming with efficiency. The realization is clear. They have not witnessed the peak of the enemy's power. They have only witnessed the start. This channel brings you these rarely heard perspectives on the war's most critical moments. If you believe this history deserves to be shared, then hit the subscribe button now. Don't let these essential perspectives be forgotten. The emotional arc plummets into despair. The soldiers who fought on the islands were sustained by the belief that their sacrifice was buying time for their nation to rally, for the enemy to exhaust itself. Now, they see a nation that appears to be inexhaustible. Every sacrifice they made, every life lost, every moment of starvation, it was all spent against an opponent who could simply build a new factory to replace the loss. They begin to realize their leaders were not just strategically wrong, they were disastrously wrong about the fundamental balance of world power. They did not fight a struggle between equals, they were thrown into a conflict with a global machine they could never hope to match. The discovery of the atomic bomb, coupled with the daily observation of American civilian and industrial normalcy, leads to a single, agonizing conclusion: they never had a chance. The days in the camp drag on. They receive word that the end of the war is imminent, not because of a grand final battle, but because of the inevitable capitulation following the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. The final, crushing defeat is delivered not by force of arms, but by an unanswerable scientific superiority. They are witnesses to the silent destruction of their national narrative. They watch the Americans celebrate the end of the war with a casual, massive outpouring of joy, street parties, dancing, and the sounds of horns and bells that reach the camp from the distant city. This is the celebration of a nation that won without ever truly being touched, a nation that could afford to celebrate not with relief, but with certainty. The women are left in their barracks, surrounded by the overwhelming reality of the American victory. They are survivors, but their minds are now a battlefield where belief and fact wage a silent, final war. The ideological fortification they held has collapsed under the weight of this new reality. One afternoon, a small group of American officers enters the camp, not wearing military uniforms, but civilian clothes. They carry no weapons. They approach the women's barracks, and the highest-ranking officer, a clean-cut, young woman, speaks to them in perfect Japanese. She tells them that the war is over, that they are now under the protection of the American government, and that they will soon be repatriated. Then, she delivers the final, bewildering order: they are to be moved one final time, to a completely different facility. They are to be sent, not to a desolate prison camp, but to a vast, sprawling military base in the heart of the American Midwest, a place where the factories that built the tanks and planes they fought are still roaring with peacetime production. The officer smiles, a polite, neutral gesture. She tells them this new move is for processing and observation. As they gather their few belongings, they realize the true purpose of the move is far more terrifying than imprisonment. They are being sent to see the engine of their defeat up close, to become the witnesses to the very power that crushed their world. They are about to see the true, unvarnished face of the enemy's unassailable industrial power. The bus arrives to take them away, its windows dark. They file out, knowing the greatest shock of their lives is still waiting down the road, in the dark, humming heart of America. The women experienced a shift in reality that few can comprehend. To ensure this unique story of ideological collapse and revelation reaches more viewers, please share this video with a friend who appreciates a gripping historical account. Let others know your thoughts in the comments below. The buses pull out of the camp, moving quickly onto a wide, multi-lane highway. They travel for hours, the scenery blurring into a canvas of endless towns, limitless farms, and colossal, efficient infrastructure. They are passing through the true, untouched American heartland. Finally, the buses turn off the main road and approach a massive facility, a base so large it seems to stretch to the horizon. The sign above the gate is lit by powerful floodlights, revealing the name of the destination. As the buses pass through the checkpoint, they realize they are not being taken to a prison camp, but to a place dedicated to the future. The final destination is a major Air Force base, a center of innovation and industrial deployment. The interior of the base is a dizzying, overwhelming display of military power in repose. They glimpse rows of untouched aircraft, massive hangars, and the cold, metallic architecture of laboratories. The buses stop inside a cavernous building, and the doors swing open. The cold air inside is thick with the smell of new metal and chemicals. They are ordered to look up. Towering above them, assembled but not yet deployed, are the dark, colossal shapes of the newest American heavy bombers, the aircraft that will define the next age of warfare. The final question hangs in the industrial silence: what new, terrifying power has this inexhaustible enemy just finished building? The massive transport buses lurch to a final stop inside the enormous hangar. The doors swing open, and a blast of cold, recirculated air hits them, thick with the smell of new metal, oil, and chemicals. They step out onto the polished concrete floor, and their eyes are immediately drawn upwards. Towering above them, dominating the cavernous space, are the dark, colossal shapes of the newest American heavy bombers. These are not the familiar, smaller aircraft they fought against in the Pacific. These are immense, four-engine machines, cold metallic symbols of total, future power. They stand silent, assembled but not yet deployed, and they represent the final, devastating answer to the question that began on the jungle island: how could we have ever won? This vast military base in the heart of the American Midwest is the final stage of their captivity, and the ultimate engine of their defeat. They are no longer just prisoners, they are unwilling witnesses to the unassailable power that crushed their nation. The shock is no longer external, it is a deep, internal collapse of their entire ideological framework. They are processed into a large, simple barracks facility on the base. The camp is clean, efficient, and surrounded by the endless, humming noise of industrial activity. This noise, the constant roar of aircraft engines being tested, the clank of machinery, the distant scream of factory whistles, is the soundtrack to their defeat. It is the sound of certainty. The ideological fortification they clung to throughout the war, the belief in the enemy's weakness and their own spiritual superiority, now falls. This is the heroic last stand of their belief system, and it is lost, not to a charge, but to overwhelming technological reality. They are given supervised tours of the massive base's periphery, ostensibly for exercise. What they see is a military-industrial complex operating at peacetime efficiency, but with wartime capacity still intact. They pass massive factory complexes, the very places that built the tanks and planes they fought against, and they realize the factories have not closed. They have simply shifted production. They see thousands of American workers, men and women, pouring out of the gates at shift change. These are the people they were told were demoralized and exhausted. Instead, they are well-dressed, laughing, and getting into their own personal cars. They see a workforce so vast, so skilled, and so productive that the idea of stopping the American war machine seems utterly ludicrous. This reality crushes the last sliver of hope that their sacrifices had somehow damaged the American ability to wage war. They realize the enemy never truly had to strain its civilian economy. The war, for America, was an expenditure, not an existential threat. The emotional arc reaches its final point, profound sorrow and realization. They understand that the soldiers who died beside them did not die in a struggle for survival against a desperate foe. They died in an impossible fight against a resource pool so deep, it could afford to lose 2 entire fleets and still produce the atomic bomb. They begin to grasp the legacy of their struggle. It was not a heroic stand for victory, but a catastrophic failure of intelligence and estimation. They were thrown against a power that was simply too advanced, too productive, and too technologically superior. The women experienced a shift in reality that few can comprehend. To ensure this unique story of ideological collapse and revelation reaches more viewers, please share this video with a friend who appreciates a gripping historical account. Let others know your thoughts in the comments below. The war is officially over, marked by the continued, unsettling silence of American victory. The celebrations they hear from the distant city are joyous, but the silence within the barracks is heavy with the weight of this new knowledge. They are now the keepers of a secret their nation could not acknowledge, the true, unvarnished power of their enemy. This period of processing and observation is the most intense part of their imprisonment. The Americans are not interrogating them about strategy, they are simply allowing them to observe the reality of American life, trusting that the evidence will do the work. One afternoon, they are shown a newsreel in the barracks cinema. The film details the enormous industrial output of American shipyards during the war, clips showing vast numbers of Liberty ships and aircraft carriers being launched at dizzying speed. The images fly past, hulls moving down slipways almost weekly, planes being lifted fully assembled onto decks. They see the numbers flashed on the screen, figures that far surpass the total production of their entire empire throughout the war. The sight of the endless shipyards, clean and humming, is the final psychological blow. They look at the pictures of American women factory workers, smiling as they weld steel, and they understand the full, terrifying truth: the enemy was not a political ideology or a military force, but a total manufacturing system. The fortification falls completely. They now retreat into a silent, internal acceptance of defeat. The silence in the barracks is not a protest, it is the absolute quiet that comes after total collapse. They realize the scale of the error that cost their nation millions of lives. The aftermath of their captivity is not vengeance, but repatriation. The American officers, now speaking to them with a tone of clinical finality, inform them of the details of their return home. The process is organized, efficient, and immediate. They are given clean clothes, basic supplies, and are boarded onto new, fast transport ships heading west. As they are marched back across the massive base toward the waiting transport, they pass one final, small building, a nondescript, low-slung structure guarded by two silent, helmeted Marines. The windows are heavily blacked out, but as they pass, the heavy steel door slides open for a moment, and they glimpse the interior. It is not a factory. It is a quiet, immaculate laboratory. Inside, bathed in cold, blue light, are engineers working with astonishingly small, intricate metallic devices, pieces of equipment that look less like wartime technology and more like the workings of a watch. These devices hint at a level of miniaturization and precision they have never conceived. The door clanks shut, but the image is burned into their minds. It is the final, agonizing revelation: the enemy's true power is not just in mass production or giant bombers, but in the unseen, fundamental breakthroughs of pure science. They are ushered onto the bus. They will carry the devastating knowledge of this new, industrialized world order back to their shattered homeland. The question is no longer how could we have one. The new, terrifying question that will define their future and the future of their shattered homeland is simply, now that we know the truth, what do we tell the people who sacrificed everything? The bus pulls away, heading back toward the Pacific coast, leaving behind the dark, humming heart of American power. The land stretches out before them, untouched, boundless, and overwhelming. This incredible story of ideological collapse and realization must be preserved. Your engagement helps ensure this unique piece of World War II history is not forgotten. If you found this final chapter gripping, please hit the like button and subscribe now. They stand on the deck of the troop ship, watching the coastline of the American continent slowly fade into the sunset. The immense continent is retreating, but the vision of its power remains imprinted on their minds. They are going home, but their minds are filled with images of skyscrapers, endless factories, and the terrifying promise of pure, unanswerable technology. The smoke has cleared, the fighting has stopped, and the silence of the Pacific surrounds them. But the war is not over for them. The heavy cost they bear is the knowledge of the insurmountable gap, the legacy of fighting a war against the future. The weight of this truth is the only luggage they carry. The final journey home is not a passage of peace, but a long, silent voyage into the impossible burden of knowing the truth.